What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel for another 1/6 scale figure related video. Guys, I gotta be honest with you, it's hard to contain my excitement. I've been waiting till I got home from work today to talk about this figure all frickin' day. If you know me, you know I'm a big Predator fan, so this Deck and Thia announcement from Predator Badlands by Hot Toys is very, very exciting. I'll start by saying I really enjoyed this film. I had a great time all throughout. There's a lot of things that I really enjoyed about it. I won't get into my thoughts on the film or any spoilers or anything like that, so don't worry if you're watching this review of this figure. I will not spoil anything for you. So with that being said, I want to get right into it because I'm very, very excited to talk about this. So you probably saw in the thumbnail the question or the statement of, is this the best Hot Toys Predator ever? I want to start by, kind of talking about some of the things I see here that kind of makes me lean in that direction. Number one, as we saw in the little teaser the other day, and it is confirmed here in these photos for the official announcement, we do have a fully seamless body. At least all the visible parts are fully seamless. So the arms, the knees, all fully seamless. Yes, you do have a bit of a joint visible at the ankles. There is a ball joint, but, that's to be expected. I don't think that would be a good idea to have a fully seamless body all the way down to the feet, because it might put a little bit of pressure on the feet when you go to pose them and limit posability. But generally speaking, most of the visible parts appear to be seamless, which is really, really awesome. Here's a starting shot here, the very first photo of Deck with Thia on his back. There are two SKUs with this set. I don't know why you would want Deck without Thia, unless you want to save a little bit of money, and I totally understand that. But I think she's like intrinsic to this whole performance in this film. Having those two together, it makes sense. There is another character, a creature that, a lot of people were voicing their opinions. They wanted to see that included with this. Again, I don't want to throw too many things out there. You do see him in the trailer, but I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to spoil it for you guys. But that creature would have been cool to be included. Not a deal breaker for me, but definitely would have been nice. So I want to start by pointing out a couple things. Now, the first thing, and the thing that I've seen a few people point out, and something I noticed myself, the skin tone needs a bit more brown in it and a little bit less pink. I think it's a little bit too pink, a little bit too light colored. Looking at some behind-the-scenes photos, and I will share these a little bit later in the video, the flesh tone does appear to be a bit lighter looking at the screen-used costume. I think it's a combination of this paint job needing a little bit more brown hues to it, and also the color grading that you see on film, because there is some color grading there that also darkens the suit up a little bit. As it currently stands, do I think it looks bad? No. Do I think it's something that Hot Toys will update? I do think that is certainly on the table. They made some really nice updates to the Feral Predator, including a fully seamless torso, which we did not see in the prototype. So I very much think that Hot Toys will make adjustments to this. We don't know what they were provided with prior to this film coming out in terms of material that they were able to base this figure off of. But with that being said, looking at the armor and everything, and I want to go to some more photos so we can see that a little bit better. Looking at the armor and everything and comparing it to the screen-used costume, I think they've done a very honest job here. I mean, the unfortunate thing with a lot of these Predator figures in the past is they've been able to reuse parts, and because of that fact, we see a lot of laziness with some of the Predator figures in recent years. Perfect example, the Jungle Hunter Predator 2.0 is an absolute abomination. It's very, very inaccurate, and what I'm seeing here is the exact opposite. Though I do have my gripes with a couple things, maybe a few things, I think this is an excellent start for this prototype. I think it looks way better off than that Jungle Hunter Predator 2.0, quote-unquote. If you guys want to watch my video on that I made in the past, I pointed out all of the inaccuracies that I personally found with that thing, and there were a lot more than I see with this one here. But yeah, I'm really liking what I'm seeing here, and I've seen some people comment on this transition here from the neck to the head. You'll see when we look at some shots of the screen-used costume, it is darker here than it is on the neck. There is a transition of color. I think what makes it a bit more obvious is having that seam line there. I think if that seam line wasn't there, it would kind of transition a little bit easier. Another thing that people are going to point out is there is a seam line here, which I don't think is overly visible. Guys, I own like 17 or 18 Hot Toys Predator figures. Anything that has swap out mandibles and a biomask, for the most part, apart from like the Feral Predator and the Berserker, which have magnetic biomass, you're going to have a seam line there because you have to actually pull out the mandibles and put the biomask on, which has a built-in like lower jaw section to be able to attach to the face. So there's no avoiding that. Unless you have them in a pose like this, you're not going to notice it at all. Even in a pose like this, I think it's not that noticeable. But yeah, to me, not a problem. Another thing they've done with this, which is really cool, and we'll see in some later photos here from Hot Toys, you have swap out dread pieces for the very first time. And I'm going to comment on that when we get to that photo as to why I think they did that, but it's very, very clever. The skin is not silicone. It is a vinyl material, so just keep that in mind. I think it's very posable, and I think it'll be almost identical to what we saw with the Feral Predator torso. But I think it's a huge step in the right direction because now everybody's going to start thinking this like, okay, are they going to start redoing all the Predators now? Probably not all at once, but certainly that's on the table, right? I mean, now you have a reason to remake the same things and make more money out of it. But that is a huge, huge selling point for this figure, being the first Predator with a fully seamless body. I cannot stress that enough. That is definitely a huge selling point. Apart from the fact that, you know, myself and many others really enjoyed the film. Speaking of the film, Thia here was a very fun part of this film for me, and Elle Fanning did such a great job. And I'm really kind of in disbelief that Hot Toys has done such a fantastic job. This head sculpt is absolutely beautiful. I think this looks just like Elle Fanning. The details with the scarring and like the little damage on the cheek there, the hair shape, it looks really good. And another thing that I really like is like them recreating that vine material that Deck used to tie Thia onto his back. I think that's really cool. You have that little like plasma SMG, the Weyland-Yutani SMG. That's pretty cool. Another thing I want to point out that's kind of a detractor here, I think this should be way more weathered. If you look at some actual stills or clips of her from the film, I think it's much heavier weathered than it is here. There is weathering, but I think it's too light. And also, this is a nitpick for sure, but the rips, they look a little too industrial, if that makes sense. Hot Toys has done a pretty good job at making the rips look realistic, so hopefully they do improve that with the final. But yeah, what a beautiful head sculpt, man. I want to zoom in on that. That was the thing that really blew me away. I expected that Deck was going to be good, just, you know, because this film has been so highly anticipated and it's outperforming expectations in the box office, and everybody's really liking it. Obviously, this has been in development for months and months and months, but I really was just, for some reason, expecting them to half-ass Thia here, and they haven't. And seeing this head sculpt, I'm sure a lot of us who have seen the film, we're all kind of thinking like, all right, well, if you could use this head sculpt again, you should do Tessa, because Tessa is a big part of the story. She is the main kind of villain, if you will, and they could just reuse this head sculpt with some minor tweaks, or even, you know, give us a full-bodied Thia. That's a very, very much a possibility as well. But yeah, every angle on this head sculpt, man, I mean, this is like top-tier sculpting work from Hot Toys. I cannot stress that enough, how impressed I am by this head sculpt. You'll see here shortly, man, those eyes, man, just really, those details, beautiful work. You'll see here later, they actually included the Weyland-Yutani eyeball swap outs as well for Thia, which is really cool. Kind of when she's like malfunctioning or being reprogrammed or being repaired, those Weyland-Yutani eyeballs show up, and you'll see later that they actually look really good from Hot Toys. I think they did a great job. But going back to Deck, I know we're kind of talking about two figures here at once. The details on everything just really look much better than we've seen in past years. Again, like, they had that opportunity to reuse a lot of parts for many different figures, and they really ran with that, and I'm glad figures like the Feral Predator exist, and now this Deck figure where they have to make all new parts. So a lot of those corners that you normally see cut, they really haven't been cutting those corners, which is really cool. And that's not to say this figure is perfect and every detail matches detail for detail, but it's a very honest interpretation from Hot Toys and very, very close to the film from a toy standard perspective. I think it looks very good. Again, commenting on the body and the flesh tone and everything, yes, I do think we need to see more brown hues in this body. It is too light. I don't think it's like terribly inaccurate as we see it. We're just kind of seeing here how it would be closer to seeing the screen use costume in person versus what it actually appears like on screen. And of course, me, myself, and anyone else for the most part, if you're buying a figure, you want that representation of what it looks like on screen. So because of that, I want to see some changes made to that skin tone. It needs more brown, less pink. There are pink hues in it, but you need to add more brown to the skin. It needs to be a bit darker for sure. It's way too light in certain spots, especially here in the arms. It's very noticeable. I love that Thia can pose. I believe Deck has magnets in his back to aid in him holding her. There is a mode where you can actually have him lifting her up after she first helps him out in the film. He kind of picks her up and is kind of looking at her and seeing what she's all about. Apparently, you can have him in that mode, and I don't know how you do that. I don't know if it comes with a clear flight pole, like, you know, the Mando Luke Dark Trooper that was half damaged. I don't know if it's the same deal with that. Commenting on the ankle pegs, again, not a huge deal to me. I do wish they were a bit more covered. Some people were commenting on maybe the feet, and this is like a very minor complaint from some people. The feet were a bit too goofy looking, but honestly, that's what they look like on the costume. If you look at the screen use costume, they look goofy, or if you look at clips from the film, they look goofy. The stand, you know, it's a bit lazy. I don't really have too many complaints about that, though. I don't think that's the same as like the Star Wars sand base. It looks like a different pattern, and it does fit the film. I just wish they would have done a little bit more. Maybe put some little pieces of like shrubbery or something in there. They could have done that for sure. So this here. So I mentioned earlier that swap out hair piece. This is recreating one of the most popular posters that they were using to advertise this film, this exact pose here. And in that poster, there's just this incredible amount of movement in these dreads. And for some reason, they've recreated the pose here, but they haven't used this dread piece that you see here in this photo, which I think is absolutely brilliant. I love this. And if you have this dread piece here, the swap out dread piece with that pose that you saw right here, kind of recreating that poster, that is money right there, in my opinion. That looks really, really good. In terms of the biomask, this is not really a spoiler, but he doesn't wear the biomask much in this film at all. So I will not be using the biomask. This will be a rare occasion where I keep him without the biomask, because Deck as a character, very much you see his face basically the entire film. You kind of see the biomask in the introduction of the film, and that clip you see of him on that bike going across the water that was in the trailer. But generally speaking, I think the biomask looks pretty good. I don't think they've matched it like damage detail for damage detail, and I do think they're missing some of those kind of like gold hues, and the paint can be adjusted a little bit. But generally speaking, and you do, of course, you always with these biomasks have more of like a bulbous opening at the top to account for it being a toy and it having to fit over this head, just like a lot of hats on 6-scale figures where they have removable hair, but you still have to fit the hat. So you're always going to get that from Hot Toys. They don't really like to push their limits on that. That's why I usually go the custom route. But for this one, I think it's one of the better biomasks they've done, considering a lot of their previous biomasks have been very, very bad. And this one is on the acceptable level, I'd say. But again, you do have a lot of detail in the armor, a lot of detail in the biomask. They've done a good job at sculpting in that detail there. Here's a shot of Deck holding that like glaive style sword. I love the different modes that this can go into. I think they've done a pretty good job on the sword. The sword is a very important part of the story. It's one of the weapons that he basically uses the most throughout the film. And I think that looks very good. I would never have him standing in this awkward pose here, but yeah, the sword looks pretty good. It is like ever so slightly oversized in scale, but I don't really have a complaint about that. I still think it looks awesome, and I think what they've done with the paint is really like the best case scenario, apart from giving us a USB-powered sword, which I was hoping for. Hopefully Fusion Reactors cooks up something that would be insane. But I do love that it appears to be lit without having any LEDs involved. That's definitely a big plus. Here he is with the bow. Another, not really much of a spoiler, but he doesn't use this bow much at all in the film. So I probably won't utilize this, but I do love that if you don't have Thia with him, you can kind of recreate the opening of the film when he first lands on this dangerous planet. And you can kind of magnetize that to his back. But I won't be using this bow just because he doesn't really use it much throughout the film. I will say having him pose with it is really cool. And you'll see Hot Toys solution where they use like this bright red cordage, if you will, to kind of make it appear like it's glowing. Obviously, it does not look like it looks on screen, but it appears like it's glowing. as much as you can without using LEDs, I think that's a fair solution, and I think he looks really good posed with it. Another thing I love, as you have this elbow bent here, you're not getting some like awkward pinching in the material. That looks very natural. Very, very natural. Of course, I would still be careful with this material because it is vinyl. You don't want to be overly aggressive with it or anything. The bow itself looks very good in terms of the details. I think in the film this was more like white and less of this like cream color. There's some comparison photos I have, and I'll show you those photos later. But generally speaking, guys, I'm very happy. The wrist blades here, those are plastic again, unfortunately, it seems like for now, with these more intricate blades, because these blades in this film and in Prey were a bit more intricate. I guess Hot Toys felt it was more cost-effective to make them out of plastic. Speaking of costs, before I forget, Deck by himself through Sideshow before taxes, shipping, and tariffs is $345, and Deck and Thia, which is what we're looking at here, is $405. Now, keep in mind, the Feral Predator was $400, so I think you're getting a very good value. Generally speaking, considering you're getting like almost 2 figures, and you do get a decent amount of gadgets and everything like that, I think that's a pretty fair deal. We have a shot here of those Weyland-Yutani eyes that I mentioned earlier, and those look freaking awesome, dude. Like, this is such a nice addition, and this is like one of those things when we theorize what we would like to see from a figure, this is like always one of those things that you think of. You're like, oh, are they going to do the Weyland-Yutani eyes? And it's cool that they did them, and I love that they're including more and more swap-out eyeballs now that we have Anakin and now this. Hopefully they continue to do that in the future with other figures. This is that display mode I was talking about earlier. I don't know how that's achieved. I personally won't display him that way, but it's really cool that you can replicate that exact scene from the film. I really do like that. Here's another shot of Deck from the front. I saw, and wasn't a lot of people, I saw some people saying that they felt the face was off. I could not disagree more. I think, if anything, with the changes to the paint apps, making them more brown, that slightly darker brown color than we're seeing here, less of those pink hues. And a big thing that you're also seeing here are the eyes. The eyes, though the yellow appears to be the right color, they need to be much brighter. They need to have that like punchy, bright yellow look that they had in the film. But they need to have that in order to make those eyes pop, because he just shows so much emotion in this film with his eyes. Because, you know, Dan Trachtenberg, the director, was talking about the making of this film, and he was saying like that they had to use CGI to be able to get these complex movements to show emotion in his face beyond what like the traditional animatronic faceplate can do that they typically use. So those eyes are very important. Also, another thing that you see in the film, because of the difference in color with that brown and also the color grading, he has these very dark like bags around his eyes, which really make those yellowish eyes stand out. So a combination of darkening those bags, again, changing the color on his body to more of a brown color, and making those eyeballs brighter yellow, I think that will improve the look quite a bit. The actual details on the face, after doing comparison photos with the lines and the hairline and everything, I think they did a pretty fantastic job, because I have experienced so many unmasked Predator sculpts from Hot Toys that were just blatantly wrong, missing facial quills and everything, and I think this is definitely the most accurate head sculpt out of the box from Hot Toys Predator-wise that I've personally seen. Again, I have basically all of the 2.0 Predators. I'm only missing like 2 of them, which I plan on getting in my collection here soon. So I can confidently say, at least in my personal experience and what I've seen, I think this is the most accurate head sculpt to date, unhelmeted head sculpt, that is. This has been a big topic of discussion, a little joke, if you will. We're not going to talk about what that looks like, but and there's that comment about the sculpted hair pieces that are swap out. Again, really love that. Again, guys, there's just multiple things with this figure that we haven't seen in the past, which is a big, big improvement over the original Predator figures. All the recent Predator figures, none of them have been fully seamless arm, fully seamless legs. It's just a really nice change, a nice change of pace for realism for sure. But here's everything it comes with. You have the open and closed mandibles, the biomask, Thia. This is really cool. This little blade here. This is not really much of a spoiler. This pops out of Deck's wrist gauntlet, and then he actually tosses it to Thia at one point to cut herself down from the tree that he originally finds her in. So it's cool that she comes with hands to be able to hold that. That is very clever. Very, very clever. In terms of the hand selection, it could be better. I think with Predators, they've always been kind of stingy. It looks like Deck has like 6, I hope that's 6 extra hands, but maybe 6 total. And then you have 4 for Thia. Could be better. Could be better in the hand department. But despite my accuracy complaints, I think this is a stellar announcement from Hot Toys. This is one of the best, for me personally, announcements of this year in terms of details and execution. I think this looks fantastic. Now, I'm about to show you guys some comparison photos to end out this video, and I want to give a big shout out to my buddy 6Scale Treasures over on Instagram. He does an awesome job at putting up these comparison photos of the figures and their counterparts in the film, where you can kind of get a matching pose or where you can really line it up, and it helps so much to judge a likeness and the paint apps and everything like that. So big shout out to 6Scale Treasures. There will be a link in the description. Please go follow him. You're not going to regret it, because every time something is announced, he's right on top of it. And it's, again, a very nice way to kind of compare to the film and see where Hot Toys did well or InArt did well or where they went wrong, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? It's really a great resource. All right, so here we have some quick comparison photos. Again, shout out to 6Scale Treasures for these. Zooming into Deck here, and there are photos of Deck by himself. Again, I think Hot Toys has done a very good job here in sculpting this face. Again, like, you are going from a 1-to-1 scale movie costume to a 6-scale figure, and yes, you know, the nostril area could be a little bit shorter, and you can make some minor tweaks here and there, but generally speaking, guys, this is a really good recreation of the screen look that we see, because, you know, throughout filming they're using like a faceplate that's static, I believe, and then they also use CGI to make those complex movements that I talked about earlier. So what we're seeing here, I think, is very close. I think they've done a great job here. I really don't have too many complaints about that. Would it have been better with maybe a seamless neck? Probably, but I don't know how difficult that would have been to implement, considering it has those rolling eyeballs. But you can see here, let me zoom back in real quick, what I'm talking about with those eyeballs. Like, the color of yellow is not that far off. It's that the brightness of them. They really need to brighten those up, and you can see what I'm talking about. When you have that darkness around the eyes, it really, really brings out those eyeballs even more. And you can see with the color grading in the film, and again, the color being a little too pink and needs to be more brown, you have a significant color difference, at least between these two shots here. Of course, Thia's looking awesome there. No complaints about that. She looks excellent. There's a comparison shot with Elle Fanning herself, not actually in the costume. That looks great. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you could see here's Deck's biomask. You could see those like gold hues I was talking about that are missing earlier. This is like a little too like aged looking. It needs a bit more like silver to it. It's not really that far off from the film. I just think it could use some tweaks in the paint department. Again, like, they didn't 100% perfectly simulate the damage, but that's not a huge deal to me. Again, really not much to say about Thia other than what I already commented on. Again, I think they should weather this a significant amount more. And then I think these are a little too machine-made looking, if you will. I think they need to make that a little bit more natural looking. Here's a really interesting comparison of the armor itself. And I think, again, we have a pretty honest recreation from Hot Toys. Like, the cloth here that's underneath of the armor is not quite as heavily textured as we see on the screen look. But generally speaking, like, the cod piece and the armor down here is pretty close. You have some liberties taken on some of the damage bits, but I'm not mad at this, guys. I think this looks pretty good. Again, same thing here. They kind of like overly textured and damaged this stuff. It's not a huge deal to me. Those are just kind of the things that happen when you go from a figure to a screen used costume. But I think it's a pretty honest recreation. They've done a pretty nice job here at these little tiles on the side as well. And again, like, in different scenes, the coloring on the simulated leather here and stuff is going to look different. Obviously, it's a different shade of brown here. Not a huge deal to me, but again, pretty faithfully recreated in my opinion. There's a shot of those Wayland Yutani eyes again. Very, very spot on. They've done a great job with those. I absolutely love that. There's a comparison to the screen used bow. Again, I mentioned earlier, this is like almost like a cream color, whereas on the actual screen used prop, it's like a white, so they definitely messed that up there, but that's not a huge deal to me either. There's that same shot of Deck's face. Again, you guys know my thoughts on it. I think the sculpt is pretty good. I just need to see some changes with that paint. There's a shot with the bow. Again, you're not going to recreate that. It's just too difficult. Maybe someone will go crazy and use like some L wire or something and recreate that, but I'm not mad at this, and I'm also not going to use the bow anyway. These are actually the shots from JC Hong, those little phone camera shots that he does all the time. Not that we needed it this time around because those sculpts are so beautiful, but man, what a beautiful head sculpt. I really can't praise this Elle Fanning sculpt enough, and I'm really hoping for Tessa. Here's a shot of the sword. Again, I told you I thought it was ever so slightly oversized. This sword's pretty cool because it's actually, Dan Trachtenberg said it was inspired by like a glaive, I think, from World of Warcraft, which is really cool. It has that like video game inspiration, but looking at the details on the sword, I think they've done a pretty good job at recreating it, albeit a couple details here and there. I think it looks pretty good. Obviously, it'd be nice if it lit up like it does in the movie, but that's kind of a pipe dream. Here's a shot of the actor. I think his name is Demetrius. I don't know his last name. In the actual costume, you can see it does look a fair bit darker here with that color grading in the film than it does here. I think I have another shot. So here's a closer-up shot. So you could see what I was talking about earlier, where the neck, it doesn't exactly match the skin tone on the side of the head, on the top of the head. And you do see those pink hues there. But again, that brown, like lightish to fading to darker brown skin tone, it's just a little too pink on the actual Hot Toy figure. I think they could tweak that a little bit, and I think that's something easy for them to tweak. You can see it here on the body as well. In these shots, in these darker shots, that damage kind of comes out a little bit more. So maybe I was a little too harsh about the damage. And I will say here, after looking at this shot, you can kind of argue that the texture's not too bad on that cloth underbit underneath the armor. Again, pretty faithfully recreated considering we're going from a screen-used costume to a Hot Toy. So, but I don't want to ramble on any further. Closing thoughts, I think this is an excellent figure. I just wanted to kind of share my thoughts on the accuracy thing. I had so many people reaching out to me about like what I thought of the figure, how I like the film, love the film, and I love this figure. So I will be absolutely picking this up. This one will probably be a day one like Hong Kong release for me, and I don't do that very often, but I'll probably do that for this one. Let me know what you think of this figure in the comments down below. Are you going to be picking this one up? Will you be getting Deck by himself, or do you have to get the dynamic duo of Deck and Thia, the Weyland-Yutani synthetic? Me personally, of course, I'm going to go for the all-in set. You got to. I would absolutely love to see Deck's brother Quay and his father Najor. I think those would make for great companion pieces for this, and I think because this film is doing so well, maybe if they had somewhat of a thought of doing those, and maybe they've been developing those, I think they'll push that forward. And of course, Tessa would be really cool as well. So I'm definitely hoping to see more figures from this film. I will definitely be buying all of them up because I absolutely love this film, and this figure is so awesome. I can't wait to get it. But anyways, see ya.